Good morning. So we're up to Siman Chav Zayin Halacha Vov. This is the interesting halacha about the Lefty in halacha and the ambidextrous person. Any lefties here? Oh my gosh! Wow, majority of lefties. Wow. Okay, very relevant. Wow. Okay, good. Okay, ve'itze yad yeminei. So someone who is left-handed, im oise kol melachto b'smoilei. If he does all activities with his left hand, then meniach b'smoilei, he puts it on his left hand, which i.e. shu yamin shel kol adam, which is what we call the right hand, right? It's his left hand, which would be the right hand. V'im sholet b'shtei yadav, if he is ambidextrous, he can function with two hands, he uses both hands, meniach b'smol kol adam, then he actually goes for the left, he puts it on his left hand. Okay, so the rule is that if you're a right-handed person, of course you put your left hand, tefillin on your left hand. If you're a left-handed person, you put it on your right hand. If you're ambidextrous, you put it on your left hand. Now we'll see the reasons for this, because we've already seen this, that there are two criteria. One criteria is, it says Yodcha, spelt strangely, Yud Dalet Chof Hei, which Chazal understand to mean Yad Keha, the weaker hand. And therefore, your weaker hand. So if you're a left-handed person, your weaker hand is going to be your right hand, so you put on your right hand. The other criteria is Ukshartem Uchsavtem, and it depends which hand you write with. So therefore, you do the kshira with the same hand that you write with, and therefore, since you're going to be wrapping, the right-handed person will put wrapping on his left hand, so therefore the left-handed person who's going to be writing with his left hand, he'll be doing the kshira with his left hand, and he'll be putting on his... Now they're nafkaminas. Of course the nafkaminas are going to be, what if you write with one hand and you're stronger with the other hand? That's going to be the nafkaminas. Okay, but that's the background. So v'im sholet b'shtei yodov meniach b'smol kol adam. V'im kosav v'mino. Here we go. If he writes with his right hand, u'shar kol ma'asav osa b'smoilei, and all the other activities done with his left hand, or the other way around, a kosev b'smol, or he writes with his left hand, or shar kol ma'asav osa b'yamin, but all other activities he does with his right hand, yesh omrim sheniach tefillin biyad shetosh kayach. Says the Mechaber, there are those who say that the main criteria is the weaker hand, and therefore he puts the tefillin biyad shetosh kayach, he puts the tefillin on the hand which is weaker. To bring in yad keha. And there are those who say the main criteria is which hand you write with. And therefore the Ramah doesn't paskin. The Ramah says yesh omrim, yesh omrim. The Ramah adds haga v'hachi nahug. The Ramah adds that the key criteria is the ksiva. Okay, so that's going to be important. We'll see that the Gan argues, and that's why we have a lot of debate about this. Let's do the Mishnah Berurah. Sif Katan Chaf Aleph ve'iter va'ayin le'el b'sif Katan Yud Beis Chaf Beis Yad Yeminoi va'afilu nas itzi yad. What about a person who was born one way and becomes left-handed? V'nas itzi yad ad shehirgel atzmei achkach v'loi neiled kach. He wasn't born like that, but he sort of trains himself, or for whatever reason he uses his left hand. Yaniach biyamin, so then he puts it on the right hand. V'kol shekain imin hashamayim hirgilu, and certainly if from heaven he had to become accustomed to that, dahainu, shenoiled lechayli bimina, he got some sort of illness in his right hand, and that's what forced him to use his left hand. V'nitla kayach meno, and his strength was taken away from him. Ay rachman l'slan shenikda lekaf yodai minis, he had an accident and he lost the right hand or something like that. V'tzorich lasos kol melachta b'smol, and therefore he's forced to do all his actions with his left hand. B'vadai dina ki iter gomer, he is considered like a proper left-handed person. V'yoniach al hayad haratzutzo, and then he puts on the other hand. V'imchoz al briosei, and if he recovers, he becomes he gets the function of his right hand again. V'naseh sholet b'shtei yodov b'shoveh, and he becomes ambidextrous. So then what happens then? Hari hu kachol adam, he's like a regular ambidextrous person who would put on his left hand. So kol melachtei. So again, if a person is left-handed, he puts on his right hand. There's no discussion about that. What are the criteria? So the Mechaber said if he does all his actions with his left hand, so then he puts it on his right hand. Yeah, says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Katan Chaf Gimel, Hu Adin Afilu Rak Rov Melachta. It doesn't have to be all his actions, but even Rov. Meniach B'Smoila, he puts on his left hand, which is his weaker hand. What if the left-handed person says, I don't want to be different? I'll put it on my left hand, I'll work it out, I'll do it like that. It says the Mishnah Berurah, small kolodam, which is his right hand, which is the left hand, is the regular left-handed person. Af b'di'eved lo yotza. Even b'di'eved is no good. Okay. What about a person who is sholit b'shtei yodov? If a person can write with both hands or can function with both hands, rotzulema she'osa kol ha'malachos b'shtei b'shava b'shava. Your left and your right, that you don't think twice about it. You can use either hand equally. But if it's easier for you to use your left hand, even though you could use your right hand, that's not called ambidextrous. Ambidextrous is where you can genuinely use both hands equally. Okay, now so what is the halacha? The Machaber paskins yesh omrim that the ksiva is ikka and yesh omrim that the strength is ikka. Shetosh koyach. So the first criteria is that one hand is weaker. It says the Mishnah Berurah Chavvav, according to the first opinion, which says that the criteria is which hand is stronger, ksiva has no bearing. And it's no different, it's just one of the hundreds of activities you can do with that hand. You go after the majority of actions. Small. Chav Zayin, Chashuv Yamin, T'chsivu Kshartim Uchsavtem. But the other Yeshomrim is, it depends on the ksiva. Why? Because it says in the Pasuk Kshartim Uchsavtem, Mashma, to ba'osi yad shekosov ba, the hand that you write with, tzorich lichshar es atfilin al yad shekenegda. You've got to wind the tefillin, you've got to wrap the tefillin, the rituas. Miu, k'sheno loled ken. If you weren't born like that, rak achakach hirgel atzman lichtov b'smol, but afterwards you trained yourself to write with the left hand, or sham ma'asav osa b'min, but the other actions you do with your right hand, yaniach b'smol kol adam, you put it on the left of most people, for adam she'ein yochel lichtov, a person who cannot write, of course, you've got no option, but you go after the other actions. Because you can't, because ksiva is no longer a factor for him. He can't write. For hachinohug, and that is the minhag that's going on the Ramah, who says that you go boss of the ksiva. I'm a be'aloch. We'll do the be'aloch in a second. Let's do it now quickly. I'm just turning over the page. The be'alocha. If you look on my edition, it's three lines down on the next page. He quotes the Gan. It's a big machlokas achronim, but the gra be'uroi, middle of the third line. For hagra be'uroi hechzik legamrei kadei rishona. He goes after the first view, which is that you go boss of the rove, the weaker hand physically, and which activities you do with that hand, and he disregards ksiva. So says the Bi'aloch of Agrob Be'ir Hichzi Legamri Kedei Rishona, Deleazin Klau Bosa Ksiva. He discounts Ksiva totally. Vim Kain in Kaisiv Biyamin, and therefore, says the Vilna Gaon, if a person writes with his right hand, or Sham Maisav Osa B'Smol, and the other actions he does with his left hand, Yoniach Biyamin, the left hand will be the key one, and therefore he'll put on his right hand. So, just to summarize, what have we said? A lefty in halacha, if he is a genuine lefty, is out, no question, he puts on his right hand. If he is ambidextrous, then he puts on his left hand, right? But genuinely ambidextrous. If there's confusion as to how do you determine if he's left-handed, because there are two criteria. One is which is his weaker hand, and one of which hand does he write with. So then the Mechaber says yesh omrim. The Ramah says you go boss ksiva, and the Vilna Gaon argues with the Ramah and says you don't go boss ksiva, you go boss a rove action. So that's why there's a lot of discussion about that. Everyone's got to ask their own shaila. In Eretz Yisrael, the natia of poskim is to follow the Gaon. That's the general mahalach, and therefore many poskim in Eretz Yisrael will do that. But you'll see people doing both. Like we said yesterday, there are some people here that take off during Chazor Sashat and they'll put on. I'll tell you one ma'aser quickly. There was a Hasidic fellow who came to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. He had this shaila, and Rabbi Yaakov wanted to determine the kid. He says which hand is stronger. And he wanted to know which hand he writes with. So he asked the kid which hand is stronger. How you can ask a kid which hand is stronger? So he said to the kid, when you pitch, when you throw, when you play baseball, which hand you pitch with? Because that's going to be your stronger hand. So the father, a Hasidic fellow, he interjected, and he said, Yaakov, Shiva, my son's a Hasidic young man. It doesn't play baseball, doesn't pitch. Sorry. When you hit your sister which hand you hit your sister with. Right? That's it. You got to just figure out which is the stronger hand. Okay, let's carry on. Zayin. We'll do Zayin and Ches. We'll go quite quick. Zayin and Ches. Afa pishayesh la'adam, says the Mechaber. Even though a person has a makkah b'makom hanochen tefillin, he has a wound, some sort of injury on his bicep, on the place where he normally puts tefillin, yaniach tefillin. In other words, he's talking about a case where he has a wound somewhere on the bicep, but there's enough room on the bicep that you can put it. So long as you don't put it on the elbow, there isn't. You can put it there. So you've got a wound further up the bicep. So just put it further down. So says the Mechaber, "Aval pisha yesh la'odem makom hanochas tefillin." Yoniach tefillin. You can still put on tefillin. Ki makom yesh bizroya la'oniach shtei tefillin. There's enough room on the arm where you can actually put 2 tefillin. Ki ha'etzem ha'somach lebeis ha'shechi mechetzio at ha'kuvodoi, because the bone which goes from the shoulder down to the elbow, all of that is actually okay to put on tefillin. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ata kuvoda rotzolema, the bosa hatopuach on the bicep, asher letzad hakuvoda, which is the bottom half of the bicep. In other words, the half towards the elbow, v'lo ala kuvoda mamish, but not on the elbow proper. You cannot put the tefillin so low down that it's mamish on the elbow. V'im nispashet hamaka, if the injury spreads, b'chol bosa hatapuach asher letzad kuvoda, it's on the whole area, the whole of the bicep, down to the elbow, and therefore you can't put the tefillin on there. You can be somech, you have no choice. You can't put it on the wound, you just can't put it on there. So you can put it on the upper half of the arm, which is still with the bone, which goes from the shoulder down to the elbow. You can't put it on the bottom half where you should, so you can put it a bit higher up over there. To put it over there. If the makkah is so great that it's spread over the whole area and putting on tefillin is going to cause a lot of pain, you're exempt from putting on the tefillin shel yad. Even if you have got space, and you only put the tefillin shel rosh. Like we said previously, so if you've got an injury on your arm, then it's possible just to put on the tefillin shel rosh, like we said yesterday. Okay, let's just quickly do ches. Orach ritzua shel yad. Now, the length of the ritzua of the shel yad, that you can wrap around the arm and you can tighten the kesher around the tefillin, the bias of the tefillin shel yad, and you wrap around the hands and you put it around the middle finger. On the middle finger, when you do the tefillin on the hand itself, you wrap around the middle finger 3 times. Says the Mechaber, we wrap around 7 times around our arm. We're all familiar with this. Says the Ramah, and you try not to put the ritzua too many times around the actual bayis shel yad. We'll see why in a second. Says the Mishnah Berurah, shlosha krichas. So you put 3 wrappings around that middle finger, shnayim beperek hatachtoin, 2 on the lower joints, at the bottom half of the finger, and once further up the finger. Some say the other way around. You put 1 over here and 2 on the upper half. And you put them after the shel rosh. So that we know that. We do it automatically, right? We've been trained to do this. So we put the tefillin shel yad on, we wrap around the 7 times, we put our tefillin shel rosh on, and then we do the ritzuos of the shel yad. Shiva. So we do 7 times around our arm. Shiva, and that's our minhag. He says 6 or 7. Our minhag is to do 7. The 7 wrappings, the 7 windings, you only do on the arm. I've never seen this before, but there are those who are knowing to do 3 above the elbow and 4 over here. Did Rabbi just do that?
They do a shin over here.
Yeah, so that's what he says in the picture book. Yeah, in the picture book he's got a picture of that. Yeah, here look, if you see on the picture book, I'll hold it up to the camera. Yeah, can you see it all? That you do a shin, where is it? A shin over there, above the elbow, underneath tefillin shel yad, and then you do 4 in the arm. Okay, I've never seen that in practice. Yeah, Rabbi just do that?
They're about the 4 arm, they do the shin.
Okay, alright. Let's just finish off the Mishnah Berurah. So the Sharet Shuvah says the Mishnah Berurah, that you should do 7 on the arm. Not like people who do 3 above the elbow and 4 on the arm. What was that going on? Ve'ein lichrech is going on the Ramah. Ve'ein lichrech haratzua ala titorah. Yeah, you shouldn't do the ratzua on the titorah, which is the base of the shalyad. Shekvan iskam ukshatim ratzua shala mabarta. The mabarta, we'll discuss it more, but is the bridge between. If you imagine the way the ratzua goes through, yeah. Because you've already been Mekayim doing it over there. So ve'ein lichrech shekvan iskam ukshatim b'ratzua shala mabarta. Or kamei b'tefillin sharosh shetoli b'ratzua shebatoicha mabarta. And so to the tefillin sharosh, you've also got that bridge where the ratzua goes through. V'kivin she'ei mitzvah klal b'krichet lochein ein lanicha ala titorah sheyesh ba kedusha yosef min haratzua. Because the titorah has got more kedusha than the ratzua. By you putting the ratzua on the titorah, which is the base of the bet shalyad, you're putting on top of it. It's not appropriate. We put the shalrosh before you start winding on the hand. However, if you're putting the ritzua around the bishalyat to secure it, because it's just sort of wobbling around, that would be okay. The tefillin shalyat shouldn't be dislodged until you put the sharosh on. Then you take it off. You take off the ritzua because now it's secured, and then you do the 7. If the boti yad, the hands are very narrow, then you, like I said, to secure it in place, that would be the seder. That would be okay. All right, so we'll leave it there.